Hey, what's up, everyone? I wanted to come on and talk about a problem that I see more and more, and I think that this is one of the biggest problems that is affecting the church, especially the Catholic Church, in our society today, and especially in North America. Everywhere you go, no matter where you drive around, at least up here in the Toronto area and pretty much all over Canada and the northeastern United States, I'd have to say that you see a majority of these Protestant churches, with a few exceptions. There are a few denominations that are an exception to the rule, but for the most part, everywhere you drive by, it seems like they have a female pastor now. And it leads me into the topic of the feminization of Christianity. And by Christianity, I particularly mean Western Christianity. There's this pressure, this societal pressure, more and more in the Catholic Church to have females involved in everything. You go to the Novus Ordo Mass and you see women reading the scripture readings for the day. You see women giving out the Eucharist. You see women involved in basically every parish council. They are usually in the positions of leadership in almost all of these. And a lot of this is strictly my opinion, but I feel that what this has done is it has completely turned men away from the church. And that's why you see a lot of men moving towards the traditional Latin Mass. The only place where you'll really see young men involved in the church is usually at the traditional Mass, or if you go to a Byzantine parish, often you'll see that as well. But in the Western churches, especially in the Western Latin Rite Catholic Church, amongst the Novus Ordo crowd, you just see women all over the place. They're involved in everything, and usually, like I said, they're usually leading everything. And this has turned young men away, and I think that this is a big problem as to why vocations are almost non-existent in some dioceses, is because, you know, the church has been so feminized that men just don't want to go anymore. Men want nothing to do with church because it's considered being feminine to a certain degree. And I feel that this is one of the reasons that, you know, there's a few exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, vocations have basically dried up throughout the world, and especially in America. And then you go to a traditional parish where they regularly have the Latin Mass, or maybe they only have the Latin Mass, and you'll see an opposite trend where you'll see that it's mostly men, and a lot of times it's young men. Now, there's often a lot of women as well, but a lot of times they're there with either their husbands or their boyfriends, or, you know, they're there with their family. And it just goes to contrast the difference between the traditional faith and this liberal, feminized version that you see oftentimes in the Novus Ordo. Now, there's obviously some exceptions to the rule. I've been to some Novus Ordo masses where there's a lot of young men. But that would be the exception rather than the rule. What's interesting is that in the Orthodox world, amongst Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox, they don't really have this problem. In fact, they actually say that the majority of attendance, a slight majority, is men. And one of the reasons why is because when you look at their theology, it has room for the feminine aspects of our faith, but it's a very masculine approach to the faith. When you talk about theosis and fasting, and, you know, some of the things that we as Catholics have basically discarded in the Novus Ordo Mass, or, you know, I use that term Novus Ordo to refer to the entire Western Church, where, you know, this is the predominant Mass now that's celebrated. You don't see those practices. You see them oftentimes discarded. And what it does, you know, although people may claim that they have more participation in the Mass in the Novus Ordo, what it does is it drives men out of the church. You know, they'll go when they're younger and they'll go with their family, but once they hit 16, 17, 18 years old, that's it, they're gone. And that's one of the things that we deal with as a society is that there's this general perception that Christianity is very feminine. It's a very feminine thing. But when you look throughout the history of the church, I mean, the church is very masculine. Jesus Christ is the ultimate man. He is the exemplar of what it is to be masculine. And I think that, especially amongst the Eastern Orthodox and the Eastern Catholics, and also the Oriental Orthodox, you don't see young people leaving the church in droves. And what's interesting is that even though the faith is very masculine in many respects, you don't see the young women leaving the church either. I mean, maybe there's a few cases here and there. I mean, with the persecution of the communists, it obviously drove a lot of people out of the church and never to return, and then their families didn't return either. But for the most part, I mean, I'm talking about the situation here in Canada and northeastern United States. When you look around, these Orthodox churches and Eastern Catholic parishes, they have a lot of men that you don't see in the Western Novus Ordo masses. So we've lost something. There's something major that we've lost in our, whether it's a focus on the theology or whether it's on, you know, the fact that they've demasculated the priesthood so much and all the roles in the church. You don't see young men involved anymore. It'd be interesting to get your take as to what you feel on that subject, because there's a lot of people that would really disagree with me on some of the things that I just said. And then somebody's also raised the objection to me in the past that, okay, well, that's true, but now the part of the problem is that young men don't want to participate. So therefore they have to fill these positions of leadership with women, because it's only women that are really involved in the church. And that point is partially true, but it doesn't actually get to the heart of the problem. Because when you go to the traditional masses, for the most part, I mean, there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, you don't see this problem. That's my take on the subject, and that's all for now.